Hi, my name is David Kitazaki. I'm a member of Xaxl'ip First Nation, or formerly known as Fountain, which is part of Statlium. I'm actually born and raised in Kamloops, BC. Formed DK Architecture in 2014.
I'm James Davies. I'm a senior architect with DK Architecture. I worked with Dave for about 3 years. I grew up on Shawnigan Lake on Vancouver Island in the traditional territories of the Malahat, Cowichan, and Quamachin nations.
I got into architecture because when I was in high school, I found drawing specifically very easy. Once I learned how to do two-point perspective, I started drawing a lot of buildings. In high school, I started taking drafting, which was fairly easy to me. And then I took the computer-aided drafting and design course in Kamloops.
I have a fairly good technical background, so because I had worked in construction prior to going to architecture school. So I went actually to architecture school later in my 30s. And I also had a creative background because I studied fine arts.
We're contextual designers, so we actually design buildings that are very specific to each of the communities that we're designing for. So a lot of our buildings will be reflective of their community and culture. So you won't see a lot of our designs being repeated. Basically, we design for our clients, and we want to make their community proud of the building. We want them to recognize what the building is. It may be a modern interpretation of their traditional buildings.
The architects that I've admired that were, quote, modern architects, but they looked at traditional forms and took the spirit of it and created something new with it. So there's a continuity, but it's not based in the past. It's taking the good qualities from the past and bringing them into the future. So I think that's what we've been trying to do as a firm. We look at traditional forms, we look at traditional things, and there's aspects, whether it's you can bring culture and bring art into the projects, so it represents the history of the people, but it's also in a new context.
Some of the buildings were coming up with shingled glass, trying to mimicking the cedar shingled siding, continuing that around the buildings, incorporating their culture, their tradition.
It's good to feel that you're giving something back to the communities and allowing people to take control of their communities and grow.
It's fun working with a lot of our clients because they're all over BC. That's very diverse, different clients. So when we engage with them, there's a lot of learning process on our side, understanding them, educating ourselves. A lot of these projects take a long time. Sometimes could be 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. I think the biggest takeaway for me is when the client goes in, and if they're happy with it, then that's when I feel like I'm successful. Designing, meeting the people, going to their communities, engaging with them, having lunch by a fire, just seeing BC in general. BC is so diverse and so beautiful. Get to travel and then actually seeing our design work come to fruition, getting built. I've always known I wanted to work with First Nations client in design. It was a way to get an understanding of my First Nations culture, since I was a little bit disconnected when I grew up. My path has been very personal, I think, wanting to work with First Nations client to get a better understanding of myself. That was a personal reason. So if anyone else wants to understand about themselves, I suggest getting into First Nations business and trying to deal with First Nations clients. It's a tremendous opportunity to learn about yourself and the First Nations throughout BC.